It was all you could see, snow everywhere. Now, the warning for heavy snow went out on Saturday, January 29th, but nobody was prepared for the more than 3.5 feet that fell over a 37-hour period. And it was piled even deeper in Oswego.
Well, as you can see, they've had quite a bit of snow here in Oswego. As we said, about 102 inches.
8.5 feet. Think about that. 8.5 feet of snow. Well, they used helicopters to get badly needed supplies like food and coal to some isolated areas. And the weight of the snow also proved to be too much for some buildings.
Inside, this is what it looks like at the west end of Sears Store and Fairmount Fair.
I also remember that many of us were snowed in here. We were put up at a nearby motel, but they started running out of food in a few days. And the final day that we were there, when we went to the dining room for breakfast, we were told they'd run out of eggs, bacon, ham, bread, milk. So we asked if they had anything at all, and they said yes, they had prime rib. So that was our breakfast that day.
Well, that's at least one way to get around on a day like this. A lot of the roads are still blocked. We're on Benedict Road, not far from East Syracuse. And as you can see by the sign over here that these boys have taken some time to put up, you can't get very far down the road.
Schools were closed for about a week, and it was 4 or 5 days before most streets in the city were passable. And up north, bulldozers were used to clear the way for police and ambulance crews.
It's been extremely rough. Of course, we're beginning to see a little daylight here, and we hope by mid-afternoon with the equipment which we have finally managed to get from the state, that once we get the plows going, we'll be able to have a little bit of traffic control, which is, of course, as you can readily...
One of the local leaders charged with handling the emergency was then Onondaga County Executive John Mulroy, who reminisced about the storm and its aftermath.
The intensity and very widespread coverage of that particular storm caught everybody by surprise, and it turned out to be a disaster.
John Mulroy was Onondaga County's first county executive, and he was at the helm when the blizzard of '66 hit. "27 years later, Mulroy watched from the sidelines as county and city officials coped with the storm with far more resources at their disposal than he and Syracuse Mayor Bill Walsh had available.
People didn't have snowmobiles in those days, and they didn't have four-wheel drive vehicles. And it was a much slower process getting out. Remember, there were city streets even that weren't open for a week. And Salina Street had 20 feet of snow in it. The only way to open it was to pick it up and carry it away, which we did.
Mulroy still remembers how many county and city employees somehow managed to get to their jobs, and how others stayed at their posts for days when their relief couldn't get in. Another example of community spirit at its finest. Central New